taking a Solidworks part into KeyShot for animation. If you do animation in KeyShot, it's nice to have a help geometry. So in this case, I will go for the sketch here on the hinge cap and make an extra object. So I mark sketch 9 because I will reuse that circle and go for boss extruded. Here I will make an offset, so we start a little bit outside the tea kettle, and I will accept that. Now we have a new body under solid bodies, and we could take the opportunity to rename that. So hinge help pivot. So we will reuse this in KeyShot later on. Right now, the only thing we need to do now is to close the cap or close the lid. And we used the feature body move to open it up 40 degrees. So I will suppress this function here, which means it will be inactive. And that closes this object. Okay, let's save the file. So, file, save. And now we can jump to KeyShot. In KeyShot, I choose File Import, or you could drag and drop. Here we have the Solidworks file. And if you have an older KeyShot, you could save from Solidworks into step or IDIS format. So then it will still be okay to get into KeyShot, even if you have an older KeyShot. But here, for us right now, it's no problem. We could open up the KeyShot file. And please turn off center, snap to ground. Keep original is what we would like to have. That means that it will not be moved by KeyShot in any peculiar direction. And we could add in more stuff and it will fit perfectly. Y up is what we're using right now, even though as an industrial designer, setup might be more appropriate. We go down, further down here, and we could see that the grouping here is set to object. Geometry. The tessellation quality gets better if you go closer to 1, but you will have a huge amount of polygons. So this is something that you could try out. If you're coming from a solid modeler or a NURBS tool like Alias or Rhino, you could also turn on import NURBS data. Then you have the original NURBS quality information there, and we could do a retessellation if you like. Accurate tessellation is also something that we might turn off with small models that we're working with here, and that will improve the quality a little bit. So let's go for this. Import. Now we could bring some color onto this shape here. So I will just bring in a blue color and we could rotate around. And when you're working in KeyShot and don't really need the rendering to look at, I suggest to go for performance mode. Otherwise, maybe you hear the fan of my computer ramping up. But if I go for performance mode, it doesn't kill your computer in the same way. So performance mode makes it a little bit easier to work with. So what we have right now is the opportunity to use this to tell KeyShot where to rotate. So in this case, we would like to rotate the lid. So in the scene graph, just try to find the lid, and there we go. So on this one, I do a right click. And when I do that, I can choose animation, rotation. If you go down, you could see the possibilities here for tweaking the rotation. So right now we have got in the animation slider, we have got a suggestion. Oops, I just animated the wrong thing. Oy. Let's go back. So I delete that one. I don't want that animated. I would like the cap to be animated, so that's better. Okay, so let's see if I can do this correctly now. And now if we move the time slider, we could see that the cap is actually moving, but it's not doing it around the correct pivot point. And here is where this object comes into play. So what we will do now is that we will go for the properties to the right and scroll down. And here you have a pivot point that you could point to. So right now it's using its own, it's the self pivot point that it has, but I will choose pick, and then we could, in the tree, we could find the right one. But it's difficult, they have the same name here. So I just click graphically on this floating cylinder, and now it will use that pivot point which is matching up correctly. So I choose OK. And now it might be necessary to tweak the settings a little bit, but let's see what happens when we drag the slider. Oh, perfect. So now it's doing exactly what we would like it to do. It's going in the wrong direction though, so we could put in a minus here. So minus 90, and it will go from 0 up to 90 degrees. And we could also ask for a smoother feeling. So right now it makes a linear movement, but we could flip it to ease in and ease out, which you could see on this preview here what it does. So a little bit smoother, and we could play this and see what it looks like. Okay, it's just 1 second, so it's super quick. Maybe we could let it work for 3 seconds, and maybe we could do a right click and close it again by doing a mirror. So if I mirror this, maybe we could close it a little bit quicker after a pause. So let's see what happens if we play this one. Start from the beginning, choose play. So it starts smoothly, then it waits for a while and closes quickly. Okay, great. So next step, rendering. So when you would like to render an animation, it's really important to set the settings accurately, which means don't render too high quality. Before we do that, we should also turn off the visibility of this hinge here. So if I go for the Tea Kettle here and just try to find the little help geometry, then I could turn off the eye there and it's gone. The first thing that really sets this time for rendering is the quality. And now I will go from performance mode into rendering mode, and it will start to render. And then we could have a look at the image here, what it looks like. And it gets better and better and better. And if you turn on view and heads up display, we could see that 40 samples, 60 samples, starts to look okay. So the sample here is a quality value. So maybe we could just say okay to 60, 70, maybe 100, but the rendering time will go up, of course. So I suggest to take it really easy in the beginning and have like a simple animation, and then we could always tweak it up and have a rendering going all the night if you like. So for the samples, if you rotate a little bit or turn on and off the performance mode, it will start all over again. So here you have a good value of how the improvement look like. So we could have a look at the shadow and the overall feeling. Okay, let's go for render. And when you render, the first thing you would like to look at is the size of the image to render. And I suggest to go super low. And another thing is, if you're doing animation, is trying to go for accurate ratios. So you know the ratio between HD and old television sizes. So in this case we need to find a preset. So in this case it looks kind of funny here, 1920 by 969. What is that? The reason is that we're having a floating or a free camera here to work with. So if you look at the camera here, we're just using a free camera. It fills up the complete area here. And if you go for image we could say that we absolutely would like to have 16 by 9, which is kind of what we should choose, I think, the most common format. So 16 by 9, and now it adjusts the size here, so it's 16 by 9, and we see it clips a little bit here. So this also gives us an opportunity here to have the framing a little bit easier to do. So zoom in a little bit, and we have 16 by 9. We could come back to the render settings now, and now when we go for the presets, we suddenly see that the values here look more familiar, more correct to what we would like to have. They're all 16 by 9, but you should start super easy here. We could go for 640, we could even go lower values here, but let's go for this. PNG, I think it's a good format. Try not to go for JPEG, it compresses a little bit too much. Put your stuff in a good location. So for us here, it means your private network folder. If you render on the local computer, that's fine, but it might be gone next day. So it's better to put it on a hard disk or USB stick or something that you have control over. So the output here is just for a still image, and we're talking animation. So let's jump to animation. Again, 640 by 360. So go as low as you can. And actually, you could go even lower. So if you take half of this, so 320, and then it adjusts that one. So it will be like a little stamp there, but we could still see the animation. We would like to do the entire duration, which is 148 frames with the settings we have. Go for MP4, and you could take the opportunity here to rename the name here. So let's say call this Tea Kettle, and we could point to a network folder. So let's see if I could quickly find a network folder here that is good. So I go for my private network folder and put this stuff into KeyShot renderings. So that will be a good folder. Go for the network. And then you could bring it up wherever you like. Format, MP4. So go for MP4. It's the most general format right now. MP4. The codec is 264, which is also very common. And don't turn off frames output. This is really good to have. It means that it saves all the images as well. It will do the images even if you have it turned off, but it will be deleted. But if something happens, you have rendered the frames that are rendered. And again, we could give this another name here. So Tea Kettle. And again, pointed to the network folder, so you have all the stuff secured on the server. So select folder, so we put everything in there. Great. So we have everything set up for a really tiny animation, and we could go for options. If I go for options, you usually have these three different possibilities, and I suggest to not use maximum time but maximum samples when you do renderings and animations, especially because then you have the same quality value on every frame. So let's take this to a really low value, 50 samples, so we have a quick animation, and then we could always tweak this later and bring up this to a higher level. And lastly, queue. Put it into a queue. Here I already have something. We could delete that. So I delete that job and we start all over again. So I will add this job to the queue. So when you're under output, animation, and has set up everything, you could put it into the queue, and you do that by clicking add queue. If you click render, it starts to render instantly. And first of all, you almost can't use the computer. But secondly, if you add to queue, you could have still images, animations and everything in the queue, and you just start it on a lunch break or a coffee break. So add to queue, click. Back to the queue, we could see that it ended up here, and we could add in more stuff, but I'm good with this. So let's say we go for a lunch break. Let me go for process queue. So the rendering is done. Let's see if we could have a look at the render. So here we can see all the images that are made, and this means that we could also put this into Adobe Premiere or After Effects, and we could work with this in a professional video editor. So what we got here is a video that is made by these images, but from KeyShot. So usually it's a good idea, if you like to have sound or put anything else on this video, is actually to go for the original images and work with those. Okay, this looks pretty alright. So even though it was super tiny, it's kind of alright, and we could decide go for higher quality and save this again.